So Star Wars Jedi Survivor launches to mostly negative reviews on Steam. So you might want to hold off on buying it, guys, because it's mostly negative. But what's the reason for that? Because everyone's saying that the game's great, right? Well, wrong. It's having a lot of performance issues, and that it's not surprising. This isn't too surprising, guys. Hey, don't be surprised that a AAA game in 2023 is launched completely broke, because before Jedi Survivor even launched, developer Respawn promised weeks of fixes, and that set off alarm bells immediately. Not really alarm bells, it's more like a notification. Like, hey, the game that you're looking forward to that we've been hyping up and trying to get you to pre-order, it's going to be broken. You'll have to wait a couple of weeks before it works. This would have been unacceptable at any other point in the games industry's existence, and you wouldn't expect this from movies or TV shows. Like, if a movie came out and, like, the second act was just missing, had, like, missing graphics, and they just put some storyboards in there to make up for scenes they hadn't filmed, you'd be like, no, I won't buy this. But we gamers have been ground down to a paste, and we don't have a choice because everybody acts like this. This is how everybody behaves. So they did warn us. Thank you, Respawn. Thanks so much for warning us that your game's going to be broke, that we paid money for, and that everyone's hyped up for. And obviously, you want to play it at launch so you don't get things spoiled or anything. Because it's also a narrative-driven game, so half of the experience is story. But now, just wait weeks. I just won't play it. I'll get it spoiled through TikTok. I'll get it spoiled through YouTube. I've already, everyone's uploaded the 4 hours of cutscenes already, and you'll see spoilers in the thumbnails. But I'll just wait for you to fix the game with my money. Cool. So they said that, what's this? It says it stands all platforms have performance issues, although many people have been saying, hey, it's actually alright on PS5. Some people have had issues, some people haven't. But that as this gentleman on Twitter says, the actual game itself is so severely impacted across all platforms by technical problems. And this is like performance, dialogue not playing, just about everything. So an extremely bad way to launch your game. And everyone's saying, the game is fun. The game is fine if you can actually play it. But people with incredible hardware specs are getting consistent 30 FPS, lower crashes, etc. Another user simply wrote, runs like my ass after Taco Bell. Poetic. I hate journalists so much. I hate them, by the way. I don't like them, okay? They're awful. It's probably best to wait before jumping into Jedi Survivor, or you run the risk of mirroring your first impressions with performance issues. But it's nothing new for PC ports. Again, this sort of like glib, like, oh, well, it's come to be expected, and, you should probably wait. By the way, the same website, The Gamer, let's just go on their front page for a second. Let's just take a look. I clicked on this as a tag Star Wars Jedi Survivor, but half of these articles are just plastered all over the front page. So, yes, saying it's let down by jank, but it tells a great story and beginner tips and combat tips, and it's the big thing. And so this is kind of a trite point, but we've had this with journalists and journalistic outlets for years in the games industry. They make their money through getting preview copies of games and running adverts for games and doing exclusive interviews and all this kind of stuff, because that drives traffic to their website. So they can never go as hard as you'll see me going on the stream like every other day at major developers, publishers, console holders, because they all have a vested interest in keeping a nice relationship with those people, and none of them want to end up like Kotaku, where Kotaku's like blacklisted from getting preview copies of any game from anyone, largely because they're shit, because they really push the boundaries of what's ethical and accepted. But it goes to show that, hey, if we don't play nice with these people, if we criticize them as we feel they should be criticized in a way that gamers are expecting us to criticize them, then we could end up in the same boat where we don't get preview copies. So what you get is the game is let down by jank. Hang on, jank? Let's just take a look at the scene. Mostly negative. That's an incredibly bad tag to get. Game is fun, but performs terribly. Runs like, we'll assume he's saying the word poo. He censored it, but he's probably saying poo or poop. It's not good enough having a 380, blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing over and over. Oh, there he is. Runs like my ass after we found it, guys. Ah, hee hee ho ho. What a funny comment. Don't buy it yet. Not now. Poor performance. But the journalist describes it as jank. Just a bit of jank. Nothing too bad, really. Just an issue here. Well, that'll buff out. And you might want to hold off buying it. Now, he's not saying don't buy it. There's no calls here to say, look, ethically, we're at a point now where almost every single AAA game launches like this. Either performance-wise it's broken, or major features are missing, and before any of that stuff gets fixed, you have to wait weeks in the first place for the patch. And then as we saw with games like Company of Heroes and Darktide, they go, hey, we know there's problems, but we've got to launch our cosmetic system, guys. We have credos to sell. We have nice clothing. We have skin swaps. We've changed the hue on this material, and we're going to sell it to you for, $5 to $10. We need to get this out because we need more money, guys, because the shareholders are not pleased. They are not getting paid enough money. So, journalists turning around and saying, hey, just a bit of jank, this, that, or the other. They're not going to focus on the major issue, which this isn't happening in isolation, right? But this is part of the playbook of the gaming world now. You release something bad, but you hype it up so you get the money in, and then maybe you fix the problems, and you hold off on the stuff that you know is going to really piss people off, like microtransactions, overly expensive DLC, pay-to-win mechanics, whatever it is. You do that later after the reviews have come out, whether they're good or bad. And also, then everybody gets the win of when they do eventually fix it, a la No Man's Sky. You get the articles of, these developers really turned things around. It was a disaster at launch, but it's a rags to riches, David versus Goliath story. It's always painted like that, even when it's coming from like major developers, AA and AAA. It's always painted as like, wow, they really did such a great job, and against all odds, they made this thing better. And it's like, but didn't they have the capacity to make it better in the first place? Was that not an option to these guys? Could they not actually just do a good job from the get-go? Does Respawn with who's publishing, Electronic Arts with the Star Wars license, do you not have the money to do this right from the get-go? I mean, I seem to remember games like the original Battlefront or Rogue Squadron. I remember other Star Wars games coming out and not needing patches day one and not being completely broke. And that we didn't expect that as the norm. But to get back on point, journalists need to be part of this ecosystem so that everybody makes money, and a disastrous story gives them coverage. I mean, a disastrous story becoming, hey, they fixed it, becomes positive as well. And so you'll see journalists constantly harp on about, we don't have enough diversity and representation in games, and gamers are too toxic, etc., etc. There's many targets that they're absolutely to go all in on, because those don't actually affect the bottom line and get people also riled up, so, again, further engaging with their articles. But anything about criticizing the industry itself, anything about turning a mirror on the industry and saying, hey, maybe gaming is on the decline, and maybe we do need to take a stand and say it's not okay to launch completely broken games that are utilizing their IP essentially as blackmail against the gaming populace, against your market. That they all want to play this thing, and so you know that you can push the envelope, you know that you can push their buttons and say, it's pretty shit, but all those mostly negative reviews are all people who bought the game. They either pre-ordered it, or they bought it at launch and then discovered actually this thing's a piece of shit. But that's 2,000 reviews for what, a 60 to 80 pound/dollar game. So we're talking millions already. At least in the low region, and it's also out on PlayStation, other platforms, and of course this is literally like day one, day two. It's literally just launched, so they've made their money, and they will continue to do so. And all of this negative hype actually keeps the game in everybody's news cycles. It will produce lots of content like this and TikTok, etc. So in a weird roundabout way, the whole the old adage of no negative press or anything is what's the saying? It's completely dropped on my head. There's no such thing as negative press. There's no such thing as bad press, guys. Jesus. Can you tell it's Friday and my tummy is grumbling? Churning up, destroying my brainwaves? Holy shit. But yeah, so it all feeds in. This is a nice little grift that they've got going on. And it's not going to stop until people stand up. And if you would expect journalists, who usually are considered the paragon of societies, as the people who are going to, represent the little people and hold power accountable. Well, it's described as jank. It's got issues. But so just hold off on buying it. That was the line that really got me there. Just hold off. Don't not buy it. No journalist is going to come out and say that.